There's a specific moment that happens in the bedroom when a man crosses from simply being attracted to you to being profoundly, soul-deep in love with you. And most women completely miss it. But Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, spent decades studying this exact transformation. What he discovered will fundamentally change how you understand male love. Here's what most people don't realize. Men aren't emotionally unavailable by nature. They're psychologically fragmented, and when a man finally does the inner work to become whole, his behavior in the most intimate moments reveals everything. Jung called this process individuation, and he proved that you can see a man's entire psychological and emotional development in how he shows up when he's most vulnerable with you. Today, I'm going to expose 4 specific behaviors that men only demonstrate in bed when they've moved beyond performance, beyond ego, and into genuine, transformative love. These aren't things he can fake. These aren't things he can perform. These behaviors emerge only when profound psychological integration has occurred. And I need to warn you, if you're experiencing even one of these 4 things consistently, you're with a man who has done deep inner work and is capable of rare, authentic love. You need to understand something revolutionary Jung discovered. Every man carries what Jung called the Anima, an inner feminine presence governing his capacity for emotional depth, vulnerability, and genuine intimacy. Most men have completely repressed this. Society taught them emotions are weakness, tenderness is unmasculine, vulnerability is dangerous. They pushed these capacities into the shadow, the hidden parts we refuse to acknowledge. This creates psychological fragmentation. A fragmented man can have sex, feel attraction, even say, "I love you," but he cannot be truly present, genuinely vulnerable, or integrate sexuality with emotional depth. He's performing masculinity rather than embodying it. When a man integrates his anima and shadow through what Jung called individuation, everything changes. Jung wrote, "You, man, should not seek the feminine in women, but seek and recognize it in yourself." When a man recognizes his inner feminine, his approach to intimacy transforms. He stops seeking completion through you and offers genuine partnership from wholeness. These 4 behaviors emerge organically from integration. They cannot be taught or faked. The first sign is his quality of presence. Not physical presence, but emotional and psychological attunement most men are incapable of. When you're intimate with a man who integrated his anima, he notices everything. The subtle shift in your breathing, when your body tenses, the difference between pleasure and discomfort before you speak. He's tracking your emotional state with intense awareness. Jung explained the anima bridges consciousness and unconscious, thinking and feeling. It gives men access to intuition, emotional sensitivity, relational awareness. Most men cut themselves off from this, but when integrated, intuitive attunement becomes natural. Sarah described her experience. "With my ex, sex felt like a mental checklist. With my partner, he's completely tuned into me. He'll pause and ask what I need and genuinely wants to know. If I seem distracted, he notices immediately and we stop and talk." Physical intimacy flows from emotional connection. That's anima integration. A man accessing receptivity, intuition, emotional awareness when most men are in their heads or purely in their bodies. The fragmented man is either dissociated, going through motions mechanically, or so focused on performance that you're invisible. Jung called this anima possession, where unintegrated feminine makes him self-absorbed and incapable of attunement. Recognition markers: he slows down during intimacy, makes consistent eye contact because he's genuinely present, notices if you seem uncomfortable and checks in, asks, "Does this feel good?" and adjusts based on your answer. He derives genuine satisfaction from being attuned to you. It's organic overflow from conscious relationship with emotional capacities. Contemporary Jungian James Hollis describes this as men honoring eros, the principle of relationship, alongside logos, rationality. When men balance these, they bring focused intention and emotional attunement to intimate moments. If your partner seems distracted, follows mechanical patterns regardless of responses, or gets defensive when you communicate needs, that's fragmentation. But if he brings genuine curiosity, responds to subtle cues, and you feel emotionally seen during physical intimacy, You're with someone who's done deep work. Have you experienced this emotional presence? Does your partner notice subtle shifts during intimate moments? Share your experience in the comments. The second behavior is genuine vulnerability during intimate moments without defensiveness, shame, or shutting down. Jung identified the shadow as repressed parts we learned were unacceptable. For men, emotional vulnerability, tenderness, uncertainty get pushed into shadow from childhood. Boys learn crying is weakness, expressing fear is unmanly, showing tenderness opens them to ridicule. Jung's revolutionary discovery: the shadow contains 90% pure gold. The qualities men hide aren't weaknesses, they're missing pieces of wholeness. When a man integrates shadow, intimacy capacity transforms. Shadow integration looks like crying during intimate moments without apologizing, expressing genuine emotion, joy, tenderness, sadness, without covering it with humor. Admitting uncertainty, saying, "I'm not sure what you need, can you guide me?" Without experiencing this as threatening masculinity. Most powerfully, expressing needs society taught him are unmasculine. Being tender, receptive, surrendering control, asking to be held, all without shame or defensiveness. Marcus, 38, described his transformation. "I spent years maintaining this image during sex, always strong, controlled, never showing emotion. The irony is, this made me weak. I was managing my image, not being present. When I accepted my whole self, including tender, uncertain emotional parts, intimacy transformed. I can feel things now. My partner says my vulnerability is the sexiest thing because it's real." Jung wrote, "It is bitter for the most masculine man to accept his femininity, since it appears ridiculous to him." But Jung insisted, the acceptance of femininity leads to completion. Shadow integration isn't emotional volatility or moodiness. That's anima possession, where repressed feminine possesses the man unconsciously. True integration creates emotional stability with genuine depth. He feels full range of emotion, but isn't possessed. Tender without losing strength, vulnerable without becoming needy, uncertain without collapsing. Recognition. He'll sometimes tear up during intimacy without apologizing, express genuine feelings verbally with palpable authenticity, won't maintain impenetrable facade. If something doesn't work, he communicates openly rather than becoming defensive or withdrawing. The defensive, fragmented man cannot tolerate vulnerability. If emotional, he shuts it down with anger. If you point out something didn't work, he takes it as personal attack. Performance anxiety triggers rage, withdrawal, or blame. His shadow remains unintegrated. With shadow-integrated men, vulnerability becomes strength. He shows his whole self. Paradoxically, this makes him more masculine because real masculinity isn't repression, it's integration. Have you been with a man genuinely vulnerable without defensiveness, or where vulnerability triggers defensiveness? Share your story below. The third behavior is what Jung called movement from ego-driven sexuality to disinterested love, seeking the other's genuine well-being rather than ego gratification. Practically, a deeply in love man brings reciprocal focus and generous presence. Your pleasure becomes genuinely important, not as performance metric, but because he authentically cares. This is profound because most men approach sexuality from ego and achievement. Sex becomes another domain to prove themselves, perform, seek validation. Their partner's pleasure becomes about their skills, adequacy. It's self-referential. When men integrate anima, they develop conscious access to eros, the principle of relationship. This isn't technique from a manual. Eros emerges from psychological integration, from making peace with inner feminine and genuinely attuning to another's subjective experience. Jungian analyst Robert Johnson explained, "A man will treat a woman almost exactly the way he treats his own interior feminine. If he's rejected his inner feminine, he unconsciously replicates this in relationships. If he's honored and integrated it, respect naturally extends to his partner." Jessica described her relationship. With exes, sex felt transactional. They'd do foreplay because they were supposed to, but you could tell they were going through motions. With my fiancé, he'll spend extended time focused on my experience with no expectation of reciprocation. If I guide him differently, he doesn't take it as criticism. He genuinely wants to know what feels good. He told me giving me pleasure turns him on more than his own physical sensations. His actions prove it. That's eros. That's anima integration, transcending ego-driven sexuality into relational sexuality. Practical markers, genuine curiosity about your desires, real questions, listening to answers, adjusting accordingly, willing to slow down, change pace, completely shift approach based on feedback. His satisfaction comes from shared experience, not just own pleasure. You see this in his face, energy, how he responds when you express pleasure. He's not performing or tracking performance. He's genuinely present in shared experience. James Hollis notes many men are deficient in discourse, so they place too much emphasis on intercourse, using sex as substitute for emotional connection. When men integrate emotional life through anima work, physical intimacy becomes one language among many for expressing care, love, connection. Shadow side, fragmented, ego-driven men approach sex as performance, mentally tracking adequacy, becoming defensive if you communicate preferences because he experiences this as criticism. His pleasure is self-contained. Whether you enjoy yourself doesn't fundamentally impact his experience. Foreplay feels obligatory, a box to check. With integrated men, you feel genuinely desired holistically. Safe communicating needs because he receives this as valuable information. Intimacy is collaborative rather than done to you. You trust his focus on your pleasure because actions consistently prove authenticity. Now, if you're finding value in this deep dive into male psychology and genuine love, hit that subscribe button right now. This isn't surface-level dating advice. This is depth psychology that can fundamentally change your life and relationships. Subscribe and let's continue this journey together. The fourth most profound behavior is integrating sexuality with emotional depth. Physical intimacy becomes an expression of emotional connection rather than compartmentalized from it. Most men have been conditioned to split sexuality from emotion. Society teaches boys sex is a physical act, biological drive, separate from feelings, relationship, love. This creates what Jung identified as dangerous psychic split. In Jung's Red Book, he wrote spirituality and sexuality cannot be excluded from each other, and described sexuality as a creative power equal to the spirit. When sexuality is divorced from consciousness, Jung warned, men become unconsciously driven by instinct, which hinders individuation. Integration looks like expressing feelings verbally during physical intimacy, revealing genuine emotional vulnerability. Not just, "You're so hot," but "I love you so much. You mean everything to me. I feel so connected to you right now." You feel the authenticity. These aren't lines. These are genuine feelings expressed in the moment. Integrated men maintain emotional presence throughout intimate experiences, not dissociating into pure physical sensation or getting lost in mental performance tracking. Present simultaneously in body, heart, mind. Might tear up during or after intimacy because emotional intensity is genuine. Physical pleasure is inseparable from emotional closeness. Most tellingly, desire for physical intimacy flows from emotional connection. Deep conversation, sharing something vulnerable, connecting emotionally naturally increases desire for physical closeness. They're not separate systems. They're integrated. Christina, 41, described this. "What shocked me was intimacy became better after meaningful conversations or working through something difficult together. My ex-husband wanted sex when stressed as release mechanism, completely disconnected from how we were doing emotionally. My partner, emotional intimacy and physical intimacy feed each other. When emotionally close, he's more present physically. When physically intimate, he expresses things emotionally he sometimes struggles to put into words. His body and heart speak the same language. That's integration. What Jung meant when he said sexuality and spirituality cannot be separated. Physical intimacy can be soulful, expressing our deepest emotional and psychological selves when we've done integration work. Lack of integration. Fragmented men compartmentalize sex from relationship quality. Might want sex when you're fighting, when there's emotional distance, because these are separate systems. Dirty talk focuses exclusively on physical attributes with no emotional content. Seems emotionally distant during intimacy, somewhere else mentally. Desire for sex seems disconnected from relationship's emotional state. With integrated men, you feel emotionally close during physical intimacy, not just physically stimulated. Hear genuine emotion in his voice, words, expressions. Experience physical intimacy as extending emotional bond, deepening it rather than existing separately. Quality of physical intimacy directly correlates with emotional connection quality because for him they're inseparable. Jungian analyst Marion Woodman taught, "The body is not obstacle to spiritual growth, but the very means through which the soul comes into being." When men integrate sexuality with emotional depth, physical intimacy becomes soul-making. It becomes sacred, expressing our deepest, most authentic selves. If your partner expresses genuine emotion during physical intimacy, maintains emotional presence, and his desire flows from emotional connection, you're experiencing something rare. You're with a man who integrated fundamental dimensions of his being. Have you experienced integration where physical and emotional intimacy are genuinely connected? Or the opposite, where sex feels disconnected from relationship's emotional state? Share in the comments. If you're recognizing these behaviors consistently, understand you're not with an average man. You're with someone who's done deep psychological work. Most men never do this. They live in what Jung called provisional life, never fully committing, integrating, becoming whole. If you're experiencing 2 or 3 of these consistently, appreciate what you have. This doesn't mean perfection, but psychological capacity for genuine intimacy is rare. If these behaviors are absent, you now understand why. Your partner's inability to be emotionally present, vulnerable, reciprocal, or integrated isn't about you. Not because you're not attractive or good enough. He hasn't done psychological work. He's operating from fragmentation rather than wholeness. Difficult truth. You cannot do this work for him. Cannot integrate his anima. Cannot force him to confront shadow. Psychological integration is deeply personal work each person must choose. What you can do is recognize fragmentation. Stop making excuses for behavior reflecting psychological splits. Stop convincing yourself emotional unavailability during intimacy is just how men are. And decide whether you want to spend your life with someone unwilling or unable to become psychologically whole. For men watching who recognize you're not demonstrating these behaviors and genuinely want to change, start shadow work. Identify emotions and qualities you've learned to reject. What have you been taught is unmasculine? Tenderness, vulnerability, uncertainty. Whatever you've pushed away, reclaim. This might mean therapy with Jungian or depth psychology-oriented therapist, journaling, meditation, or men's groups focused on authentic sharing. Work on Anima integration. Develop conscious relationship with emotional life. Jung recommended working with dreams revealing anima figures and emotional dynamics. Practice emotional awareness and expression in safe contexts before bringing it into intimate relationships. Read poetry, engage with art, cultivate intuitive and receptive capacities alongside rational and active capacities. Practice presence. During intimacy, instead of being in your head tracking performance or lost in pure physical sensation, bring conscious awareness to present moment. Notice your partner, yourself, the connection between you. Integrate sexuality with emotion. Start expressing feelings during physical intimacy. Tell your partner what you feel, not just what you want physically. Notice how emotional closeness affects physical desire. For women, understand you also have psychological work. Jung's concepts work both ways. Women have inner masculine, the animus, requiring integration. Your psychological work will either facilitate or hinder your partner's growth. If you cannot tolerate his vulnerability, shame him for expressing emotion. Use his tenderness against him in arguments. You're actively preventing his anima integration. Watch whether he's genuinely engaged in this work or just performing engagement to placate you. True psychological work is uncomfortable, requiring confronting parts you've spent a lifetime avoiding. If he's reading books, attending therapy, but nothing in actual behavior changes over months or years, he's not doing the work. He's performing the appearance of it. Understand integration takes time. Jung called it individuation because it's lifelong. You won't see overnight transformation. Look for trajectory. Is he more emotionally available this year than last? Can he tolerate more vulnerability now than 6 months ago? Is there genuine movement toward integration, even if gradual? James Hollis emphasizes the question isn't whether someone is perfectly individuated, no one is, but whether someone is committed to becoming more conscious, more integrated, more whole. What's one practical step you're taking based on what you learned today? Will you have a conversation with your partner? Start your own shadow work? Demand more from relationships? Think about it. Jung spent his career proving human beings are designed for wholeness, not fragmentation. We split ourselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts because of cultural conditioning, childhood wounds, collective demands. This splitting costs us capacity for genuine intimacy, ability to be fully present, authentic self-expression. Ultimately, it costs us possibility of transformative love. Jung discovered intimate relationships can catalyze reclaiming wholeness. When two people commit to seeing each other authentically, supporting each other's growth, confronting shadows, and integrating contrasexual opposites, relationship becomes what Jung called the royal road to individuation. The 4 behaviors, emotional presence and attunement, vulnerability without defensiveness, reciprocal focus and generous presence, integration of sexuality with emotional depth, aren't just nice qualities. They're evidence of profound psychological transformation. They're markers showing a man moved from fragmentation toward wholeness, from ego-driven performance toward authentic presence, from unconscious projection toward conscious love. Jung wrote, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Real love transforms us, forces us to confront parts we've avoided, reveals our shadows, challenges our projections. If we're willing to do the work, it makes us more whole. If you're in a relationship, evaluate honestly against this framework. Are you experiencing these behaviors? Is your partner doing integration work, and critically, are you doing your own work? Transformation requires both people's commitment. If you're single, you now have a framework for recognizing psychological maturity. You don't have to settle for fragmented men who can't be present, vulnerable, attuned, or integrate sexuality with emotion. If you're a man recognizing you're not showing up in these ways, no change is possible. You're not broken, you're fragmented. Fragmentation can be healed through courageous work of reclaiming shadow, integrating anima, pursuing individuation. Jung's vision was that human beings could become whole. Not perfect, not without struggles, but whole. When 2 whole people come together in conscious love, they create what Jung described as alchemical transformation. Both are changed, both grow, both become more of who they're meant to be. This is what's possible when men do deep work to move from performance to presence, fragmentation to integration, ego-driven sexuality to soul-centered intimacy. This is what Jung exposed about men's hidden side. Beneath armor of culturally mandated masculinity lies tremendous capacity for emotional depth, vulnerability, attunement, integrated love. But accessing this requires courage to challenge everything society taught about being a man. I believe transformation is possible. I believe you deserve relationships characterized by genuine presence, authentic vulnerability, generous reciprocity, integrated intimacy. Understanding the psychological framework behind these behaviors gives you power, whether to recognize what you have, demand what you deserve, or become who you're meant to be. If this video transformed how you understand love and relationships, share it with someone who needs this message. Leave a comment sharing your biggest insight or commitment to action. Subscribe because we're continuing this journey into depth psychology, authentic relationships, transformative growth. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." May you have courage to pursue that privilege, demand partners pursuing that privilege, and experience transformative love that emerges when 2 people commit to wholeness. Thank you for watching, for being part of this community, and for doing difficult, courageous work of becoming conscious. This is how we change not just individual lives, but the entire landscape of human relationships. I'll see you in the next video.